Of all the cars we work on, the one that gets talked about the most is always the Escort, because it's such a special car. And people have just got this nostalgia about them. And I think it's partly because it was a cheap family saloon, there's this attainability about them. You know, you can see it racing or running at the weekend, and then you can drive it to work on the Monday. And they're not some completely out there supercar that you're never going to be able to get your hands on. You know, there's that common man aspect of it. It's like the football of the car world, you know. So they've got that real thing. And even now, yeah, people just have this warm fuzzy feeling, this nostalgia about these great cars. So the Escort, I mean, it came out, it was their sort of budget family saloon, but then, you know, the special vehicle operations area of them and the AVO, they decided they wanted to go racing, so they stiffened the body shells, they did extra little braces all over the car just to stiffen them up and that kind of thing, and took them rallying and touring car racing, and lo and behold, they were brilliant. They were really, really good at rallying. And then it must have boosted sales for Ford because they just kept on doing it. And, you know, they had loads and loads of success through the 70s and the 80s. The owner, luckily, knows all of the history right back from day one. And he's owned it since 1988, and he'd bought it off a friend of his who'd owned it for 12 years prior to that. So he had, you know, really good history on it. And the car was actually bought by the editor of Express newspapers from the stand. He loved it so much, and he owned it for a number of years. The Owners Club had been in touch. The earliest special vehicle build car they knew about was number 21, which was owned by the secretary or the chairman of the club or something. So when they found out that this was number 3, they just had kittens over it. So they were like really excited, like, you've got to bring it to the AVO show in June and whatever and everything else. So they gave it a bit of a deadline to get it ready for as well then. It came in as a light recommission. It had been in Scotland for a few years and it got a bit salty and it was a bit rusty in places. And the customer said, look, I just want to get it back on the road. You know, I've neglected it for probably about 10 years. So can you have a look and let's see what we can do. So we got it running and driving again and kind of to MOT standard, but then we kind of noticed that there's a few bits of rust here and there, and we're like, well, we need to put a sill on it. And then actually the floor's been repaired before really badly, and it just snowballed, and before we knew it, we fully stripped the car, with the customer's consent obviously, and we were fully restoring it. And then the more you strip it back, the more bodges you'd seen that had been done before. It had loads of repairs to kind of keep it on the road, but when we dug into those, it was kind of metal layered over metal. So we ended up having to pull the floors out and replace them. I mean, the floor on the driver's side, normally cast steel is about between sort of 1 mil and 1.2 mil. And the floor on the driver's side was 3 mil thick. It's like double the thickness. So it's a huge lump of steel in the floor pan. So we cut all of that out and put all new pieces in. We think it had probably been on its roof at one point because the A-pillar on this side, the whole thing had been moved over. And this panel here, the scuttle panel, which has got like a nice swooping curve in it, was actually curved the other way. And it had all been built up in lead, so we had to melt all that out and reshape all of this. And then it had gone in all of the other usual places that Mark 1 Escorts go, so along where the front wings join the inner wings, it rusted all the way along there. The wheel arches had been replaced at some point in its life and they'd been put on really badly. And in fact, like the inner arches on the rear weren't even attached to the outer arches. There was just a great big gaping hole with sealer in it. So we kind of just put it back to what it should have been and as it was when it left AVO. And then we kind of gone through and then sympathetically restored everything else. So again, with all of our restorations, we've tried to keep as much original as we can. So the seats are all the original. I mean, the customer had those retrimmed about 10 years ago or something, but we haven't done anything with those. But we put all new carpet in, the dash is all original. All the gauges, I think, are all original. The engine we rebuilt, so we bought it out. It already had quite a Larry cam in it, so we didn't do anything with that. It's got roller rockers and some other trick bits in the head, and we did a bit of head work. Again, we put hardened valve seats in to make it run on unleaded better. Put a twin dual auto carb set up on it, as opposed to the original single Weber carb. It's got a full tubular exhaust, stainless steel exhaust system, right from the manifold back. So the headlamps came from the factory with these lights on it, but they'd been lost through its history. So we managed to track down a set of 4 lamps. Now these are genuine original Cibi Ford lamps. So Ford commissioned Cibi to make them spot lamps for the Mark 1 Escort. They're like hen's teeth. They're really, really hard to find. And if you can find them, they're just completely knackered, as were this set. They had enough of the grey paint on them. I know they look like they're in kind of primer grey, but that is the original Ford Cibi colour for them. So we managed to scan the original paint so we could get a paint match of it. We then stripped them down, did our usual processing, acid dipping, e-coating and all of those kind of things, and then we repainted them. But on the reflector bowl, so the shiny part, the bowl light reflects off. Those were rusted out completely. So we actually had to remake those. You can't buy them, you can't remanufacture them. Nobody sells them. And obviously any that you find in period have pretty much gone the same fate. So I actually used some of my engineering knowledge. So we copied them, made a forming tool, and I had new ones spun in steel and then re-chromed, and then we rebuilt the light. So these are the original rings, we re-chromed those. These are all original, they were e-coated and then repainted. We made a new reflector bowl and then reassembled the whole thing. Yeah, we've got it sounding great and it goes as well as it sounds. So. Yeah, it was Larry before, now it's really Larry. And it goes really well, it sounds really, really good. And it's just, yeah, it's like opening Armageddon when you put your foot down. It's brilliant. And the owner loves it as a result of that. You know, he doesn't drive it as much as he'd like to. He spends half his time here and half his time in France. But he's thinking of taking it over to France and annoying some French people instead of just over here.